Okay, here we go. It's another day. And I want to start by saying most people listening to this will never become who they were meant to be. Not because you aren't capable, but because nobody ever showed you how. And that's terrifying because talent alone does not save people, guidance does. You can have all the talent in the world, but if no one helps you tap into it or even know that you have it, how can you succeed? How can you get to your biggest potential if you aren't doing anything that's guided, right? So that is something that is so important to know. Are you drifting? Are you just moving along with the current, just going along? Most of us do that. And that is something that can make it really difficult for us to succeed in who we are really meant to become because we get comfortable. We start to drift. And so I want to really talk a lot about this today because guidance matters. People often think if I have enough talent, I'll be fine. But talent doesn't get you everything and it doesn't get you everywhere. And we often have talents that we don't recognize, and it takes someone else to recognize it in us. So, my name is Deborah Heiser. I'm an applied developmental psychologist, and my specialty area is midlife, aging, and mentoring. So, I was the founder of the Mentor Project. I was CEO for 8 years. I also wrote The Mentorship Edge, and I can tell you that so many people don't reach their potential. They don't get to where they want to go. They don't succeed. And it's not because they're not talented. It's not because it isn't because they aren't great people. It isn't because they have a bad personality. It's because they're drifting. They're not getting guidance. Hey, how are you, Nellie? Good to see you here today. So, if you've never had a real mentor, someone who actually changed the course of your life, this is the time to take a look at that because a lot of people think that that isn't something they need. I can't tell you how many red flags that I've seen when people say they've never had a mentor. And to me, that's a red flag because everybody has had a mentor, but we often don't realize when somebody's guiding us. And so we don't take full advantage of that. So if you find yourself drifting through life, you may never get to the success that you really are capable of getting to because you're not tapping in to all the resources around you. And they're free. Mentorship is something you do not get paid for. So, if you've never had a mentor, let me know. Have you ever had a mentor? Have you not had a mentor? If you haven't, let me know. So most of the time, people think that they got through life just by, following the instructions of what we have put in front of us. But most of us have had somebody who's made an impact in our life. That could be a grandparent, it could be an aunt, or it could be an uncle, or it could be someone that is a friend, a colleague, anybody in your life. It's not necessarily school or work related. And that is why, if you are feeling like you haven't had a mentor, if you feel like you are, sort of drifting along, it's time to take a look at the people around you and those people who are probably helping you. They're probably influencing you. And you could get even more of that. And you can also tap into new areas where you can find mentors who are out there who can help you that you haven't been thinking of as mentors or possible people who can help. So part of it though is that you need to be able to get uncomfortable. It's really easy to stay comfortable and sort of drift along and just, sort of hope that things fall into place. But that's not really how life works. We have to be active participants to make the things happen, to make us successful. However, that doesn't mean we have to do it alone. We really don't get to the level that we could if we do it alone. We need others. So most people don't want to hear this, but Hard work is common. A lot of people work hard. Hard work is something that is expected. Intelligence is common. It's expected if you go places that you should be intelligent. Most people are. Potential is common. Everyone has potential. We all have the ability to do things. But guidance, tapping into guidance is rare. And as the CEO of the Mentor Project for 8 years, I saw this. I would see people say, I've got this. I don't want to ask for help. I don't want to reach out to somebody. I don't want to have to follow somebody else's guidance. I want to do it on my own so I can feel like I did it all on my own. I want to feel like I didn't need help, because most of us are told that we need to do things on our own in order to really get credit for it. But we don't really do anything on our own if we really think about it. You know, you were raised by people, you have people who are in your life, friends, family, we're influenced by everybody. And so when we think about all of these things, I'm going to work really hard, that's going to get me to where I want to be. If we say I'm smart, I can figure it out. If we say I've got potential here, it's going to work. But you try to do it yourself, you're not going to get there. Or you might get part the way, but you're not going to get all the way there. And let me give you some examples of how this looks. You know, there was Steve Jobs, who was working at Atari, and his boss was Al Alcorn. And they had not come out with Breakout, the first video game, yet. And Steve Jobs was given the task of doing the programming and engineering work for that first video game. And he told his boss, hey, yeah, I know what I'm doing. And there aren't many people who would argue with him being intelligent, having potential, and having the ability to work hard. He had all of those. But he thought to himself, I'm going to do it alone. I'm going to do this. I'm going to tell my boss I don't need any help. And so he did. He told his boss, I don't need any help. And he wasn't making the progress that he wanted to make. And then one day the boss came in and he said, listen, this needs to be done right away. There's a deadline for this, and our whole company could go under if you don't actually get this done. Can you do it? And Steve said, I can do it. I told you I can do it. I'm going to get it done. But what Steve did was he called his friend, Steve Wozniak, and he said, hey, Steve, can you help me out? I have a project to do. I got as far as I can. Can you help me with this and maybe give me some guidance? And so Steve, being his good friend, he said, sure, I'll come over. I'll help you after work. So he came over after work. No one was there. It was just Steve, and they worked into the night on this project, and they started to make progress. And then Steve Wozniak came back day after day after work when nobody was there and kept helping him. He was guiding Steve because Steve was his friend. Now, Steve Jobs couldn't have finished it, but with Steve Wozniak there, they finished this project early. And that's how that first video game Breakout became the first video game Breakout that was by Atari. So this is something that most people think, well, you know, I can go it alone. We can't. All the people who've done great things, all of the big innovators, there's any garage project, Richard, is done by more than one person. So when we think of these big projects, people having a lot of success, we often will give them some kind of credit, like, well, they worked hard, they're smart, they had potential, but we all have that. It's the guidance that we need. We need to tap into our friends. Had Steve Jobs not tapped into his friend, Steve Wozniak, there would have been no Breakout. That game wouldn't exist. Video gaming would look very different today. So this was well before Apple, but if we think about it, we often turn to our friends, to our family when we need assistance. We don't think of them as really guiding us. We think, I'm in a panic, I need some help with something. And then we don't think to tap back into them or to utilize as many people as we possibly can to say, hey, I could use some help. Can you help me out? That guidance is rare and for most people because we don't know how to tap into it. It's not like we're taught in school to go do this. We're taught to do things on our own, independently, without others helping us. So when we have talent, which we all do, and it doesn't have direction, it doesn't rise, it wanders. And that's how we end up drifting. We drift along, doing all right, but we don't reach our full potential because we have talent without direction. This isn't failure, it's just drifting. Then you wake up though one day, maybe you're 35, 45, 60, and you wonder, you know, what happened? Why didn't I get to where I thought I'd get? You're not alone in thinking that. I've heard that from so many people that they think that people should be homeschooled. Um, I think, I'm not trashing the educational system at all. I'm just saying that most of us don't realize this. We don't realize that we really need to be working with others in order to be able to get to our biggest potential. Hey, McPlay GT, good to see you here. If you haven't checked out McPlay GT's new song, he's a musician, he's a songwriter. You should check it out. It's a good one. So anyway, we usually don't fail, but we drift. And this is super common. And I've seen this in midlife and later, that people get to a certain stage in life and they're like, wow, I didn't do as much as I thought I would do. I didn't accomplish as much as I thought I would. I thought I'd do more. And so they'll feel like a failure, even though they're not. And so one of the biggest things that we can do is to really, look at ourselves, where we are, and hey, could I do better? Could I do more? And just think of that. What is it that you want to accomplish? What do you want to do with your life? Is there something that you dreamt about, but you didn't really think about, what you could do with it? So, motivation is super overrated and it's not really, but we all put it out there. That word is overused. Motivation is really a feeling. We either feel motivated by money, that's an extrinsic motivator, or by something inside of us, an intrinsic motivator. Like if you like to read, or if you like to do puzzles or play sports, that's an intrinsic motivation. So what we need to do is to realize that we need structure, that we need to build systems that help us to get into more of our intrinsic motivation so that we can tap into that and do more of what we like. So, if you think to yourself, hey, I'm smart enough, I've got enough potential, I'm doing a lot, I have some passions, the first thing you can do is to say, who can help me with this? Is there anybody in my life that I know who can help me with this? And you might find somebody, and then you might be able to say to yourself, who on the internet, who can I meet through a networking group, through my community, through someplace else? Can anybody introduce me to somebody? Can I ask questions in chat groups? Where can I get some of the assistance that I might like, or the guidance? So that's one thing that we can do. But a lot of us are very afraid of failure, or being seen as somebody who isn't smart, or seen as somebody who doesn't have potential, or that our ideas aren't great. So we don't reach out to people. Let's see. A doctor followed you and you got attacked. Okay, well, don't reach out to that person again. So look, every person, if you reach out to somebody, it's not always going to be a perfect match, right? That you reach out to somebody, you can come across somebody who's a jerk from time to time, but you really want to make sure that when you are looking at reaching out to people, and thank you, I appreciate you saying that. The thing that you really can do, that you want to make sure that you're doing, is that when you're reaching out to people, that you're thinking of everybody around you as somebody who has potential to help you, and you to help them as well. So the biggest thing that you can do is say to yourself, who am I not afraid to ask for something, to be vulnerable around? Because most of us don't want to go up to a boss and say, "Hey, I don't know what I'm doing." Like that was what Steve Jobs had a problem doing with his boss, Al Alcorn, right? That's not unusual. We can all understand that. So he called his friend and he was able to tell his friend, "Hey, I have no idea what I'm doing. Can you help me?" So if we all look at the situations that we're in and we start to ask people questions about how to be, guide us, we want to start with the people that we feel comfortable with. Drifting is not the same as dissociating. So dissociation would be taking yourself out of a situation. We often flit about and drift in terms of we might be feeling like, you know what? I'm comfortable enough. You're welcome, Nellie. We might be feeling like I'm comfortable enough. I'm not going to push the boundaries at all. So you might say to yourself, I feel really like I have a lot of potential to do something, but I'm comfortable enough. So I'm trying to let you know, get outside your comfort zone just a little bit because in order to achieve something, you really have to do that. And part of that is not just reaching out to others, but it's also saying to yourself, I'm willing to be a little bit uncomfortable. And that's what any innovator does. That's what any creative person does. They push themselves right outside of their comfort zone. You don't have to take a leap. It can just be moving one step in a new direction. So, an example would be maybe you want to learn something new. So, take an online course. Nobody's going to even know you're doing it. It's online, it's a certificate. Maybe it's not even a certificate. You just dip your toe in something new. If you do have an idea and there's something that you say, you know what, I have a great idea for something. Well, say I'm going to run it by somebody that I trust, somebody that I think isn't going to trash me or, tell me that's a terrible idea. These are the kinds of things that we can do really easily. This is something that's called lateral mentoring. It's been done forever, and we do this, but we often don't acknowledge that we're doing it. But when we have a safe space or safe person to ask help from, it makes it easy, like really easy to step outside the comfort zone because you have somebody there who's like, I'm going to hold your hand. I'm not going to let you fail. I won't let you look foolish. When you ask those questions that you think are stupid, I'm not going to laugh at you. And that's what we all need, right? If you're starting a new company or a new organization or you're writing a book, whatever you might be doing, maybe it's that you're going to even just, try something new in terms of learning something. These things, however little, however large, are the things that we often need to associate ourselves with somebody who's going to allow us to talk about our vulnerabilities and say, oh my gosh, I'm so scared to do this. Thank goodness you're here by my side. So one of the things that we don't realize is that our friend group predicts the future for us way more than our IQ. And I remember my dad telling me something when I was really young. He said, don't surround yourself with people that you feel better than. Surround yourself with the smartest people that you can in any room. You want to be around the people who are going to lift you up. And that is something that can scare people. Because if everybody around us is stuck, you are going to normalize being stuck. You're going to normalize drifting. You're going to normalize stagnation. So if we're doing that, we're going to be very comfortable with that. So that's why, we want to really make sure that we're expanding our networks, expanding to people that we say, that's somebody that I really, they're out of my league in terms of whatever they're doing. Maybe they're an entrepreneur, an innovator, or somebody who's really good in a subject that you're not great at. That's who you want to be around, because if you can just push that out one little bit each time, your social circle is going to end up predicting a much higher future for yourself. So your IQ doesn't really predict your future. It's the people that you hang around with that do. So, oh yeah, the old fake it till you make it, dress for the job you want, not the job you have. I think that there is something to that. You're right. I think that the one thing I would add to that, Nellie, is if you can say, I'm going to put myself out there and allow myself to flounder, but I feel okay around somebody, that I feel like I can be vulnerable around, to see it. Because that whole dress for the next, the job you want, not the one you have, fake it till you make it. There's often an exterior that you put up, a wall, so that people think you're much stronger than you are. And I would say that we need to be able to take that wall down with some people, right? We need at least a person that we can be vulnerable around, so we can say, okay, I, like Steve Jobs did, hey, I got it, boss. And then he calls his friend and he says, I don't have it. Help me out. That is what we need, is that extra part. And a lot of us leave that part out. And we say, if I can't do it on my own, I'm not going to do it. If I can't, if I need to get help, it means I'm not smart. It means I'm not capable. It means I'm not something. No, if you did it, you did it. So that's really, the best way that we can make the most progress with ourselves, and in the most comfortable way, because you're used to being around who you're being around. So I am talking about drifting. So talking about, I'm an applied developmental psychologist. I'm talking about how we often think that our intelligence, our potential, all of these things will carry us, but we need to be able to be vulnerable, and rather than just drift along, not drifting in a car, but drifting in our minds about being comfortable. So have you ever just said, good, I'm comfortable, I don't need to do more. And then you don't push yourself to reach the potential that you could, because you're comfortable, you're good enough. And there's nothing wrong with being good enough, but drifting in terms of how we operate, the things that we want to accomplish. I often see people midlife and older, who end up saying, I wish that I had done more. I wish that I had put myself out there. I didn't accomplish everything I wanted to accomplish. And this is why when we end up drifting in terms of, going out and being good enough, we end up not doing everything that we could. So surround yourself with a friend group, right? That is, that always pushing the boundaries and having more and more people in your life who have skills that you don't have, people who allow you to be vulnerable and you can share, hey, I don't know how to do this. So that's very helpful for us. So we should often look at being just a little bit uncomfortable, putting ourselves in a position that's going to let us go one step further ahead towards what we want to accomplish, but with a safety net of people around us who care about us. That's where most of us think that this is too hard. And I started to say this before, we are not taught how to mentor in school, or how to get people to be, in our lives in a very supportive way. So this is something that if we can start to think about this is something we can start to implement. So we're not taught how to go about finding people to lateral mentor us. That's looking to your left and looking to your right and finding people to support you. This is the time that we should be telling others and thinking for ourselves, I'm going to look around and I'm going to find people to help me. And an example I have is I'm getting ready to start another company. And just like with the previous one, I don't have all the answers. I don't know how to do everything. I need people around me who can help me, so that I can say, all right, I need everybody's resource that is smart and in all kinds of areas that I'm not smart in. That's what we should be thinking of when we're really young, right? How can I get the help that I need, instead of thinking that we're in a silo all by ourselves, trying to brand ourselves and get ourselves to the next level with no help. We end up getting to adulthood and then we're like, wait a second, who's around me? We feel alone. So in order to bring about some of that change in our lives, where we feel like we can be vulnerable and around others who are going to help us and mentor us and guide us in the things that we want to do, it's going to push us I'm glad it made sense. Thank you. It'll push us to do things, so that little uncomfortable step that we make when we try to dip our toe into something new that we're doing doesn't feel scary. It feels more like excitement instead of fear. And that's where, if we're able to do that, it'll help us to stop the drift, just drifting along, being comfortable, doing the same old thing every day, and get us to level up. So, most people think that we all have a fear of failure, but most people are afraid of being seen trying. And what I mean by that is people are afraid to have people see them try, whatever their comments are going to be, whatever they're going to say to them, whatever they're going to think about them. And an example I have is I'm Gen X, and I decided, I talked to somebody who's 21 and I said, "You have 7 million followers. Will you mentor me and show me how to go on TikTok?" And he did. And I would get on and I would do all kinds of things that he'd be like, "Oh my gosh, take that down. That's terrible. Like, you just did something really, you shouldn't do that. Or why didn't you add the music? Or why didn't you add the captions? Or why didn't you do whatever you were supposed to do?" Because he was really trying to show me, and I would make mistakes along the way. But I felt comfortable having him tell me how to do it. He was an expert. So the other thing that I was afraid, though, of was having people that are my age, that are colleagues, see me. People emailed me and they texted me and they were like, "What are you doing? And why are you doing that?" That's what people are afraid of. It's the cringe, right? Like, what are people going to think of me if I try this new thing? Well, one person said, "What are you trying to be famous on TikTok?" And I was like, "No, I'm trying something new. I want to see what I can learn." And this was something, it's the fear of being seen trying something. We are much more afraid of that than failure, because we can all say to ourselves, "Oh, I gave it a shot." There's the whole, failure is nothing, where people talk about that. But trying, nobody talks about the fear of being seen trying and how painful that can be. The fear of somebody saying, "Why are you doing that?" Or making a person, saying things that make a person feel like, "Oh, am I looking foolish in some way?" That's what we're really afraid of. So as long as you can know that, okay, you could keep drifting along, or you could try something new, and nothing bad is going to happen to you if you try something new. Nobody's going to come out and like beat you up for trying something new. Um, and the other thing is, it does sort of part the water. You can see who your real supporters are and who are not your supporters. And that can be a valuable lesson. It's not easy and it can be painful, but it's better to know who is in your corner than who isn't. And when you try something new, if you're trying to please others, you're not going to get where you need to go, because you are going to be looking to make sure that you are being seen in a better light instead of trying to really push through something. So, these are the things that, if you can say to yourself, "I'm going to try something new, even if I'm afraid of being seen trying to do it." Failure doesn't really enter it. It's when you're trying something new like that, you're not thinking of failure. You're really thinking of, what are people going to say and think about me? And that's a hard one to put outside your mind. I'm living that life right now. I'm brand new on TikTok, and brand new on YouTube and Instagram, and every platform is a little bit different. And there's a little bit of cringe on all of them. So if you can think to yourself, whatever it is that you like to do, what is it that you could push through, you know, being afraid of being seen trying. Now, I feel like I have a mentor with this who, gives me guidance, and that's super helpful. If there's somebody who can give you guidance in something, that's the best thing that you can do. Whether that's somebody who's in your life and you know them, or it's somebody that you reach out to and say, "Hey, can you mentor me?" Whether it's through an organization that offers mentoring, whatever that is. So Another thing that a lot of people don't like to hear when it comes to drifting is that um, if you're nice, you're going to avoid conflict. Avoiding conflict makes it so that you can't progress. You have to have conflict sometimes. And being nice has ruined more potential than laziness ever did. Growth requires that you have conflict sometimes, that you push through things, that you're not always nice, that you're not always trying to make somebody else happy. You have to sometimes make tough decisions. And that can be what makes people not want to stop drifting. They'll say, I'm just going to stay comfortable. I'm going to keep the peace. I'm going to just sort of relax a little bit and let myself just float on the lazy river of life. But again, being nice has ruined more potential than laziness ever did. So if you're nice, you're going to avoid conflict. If you're nice, you're going to try to appease those people that you would maybe not say, hey, I'm afraid of being seen, trying something. You might say, I don't want to have a conflict with somebody. If somebody talks to me about this, I don't want to be seen trying. I'm happy to say to somebody, hey, if you don't like it, don't watch it. Go, go elsewhere, look elsewhere. And that's people that I've known. So I can be nice, but I can also say, I'm going to stick up for what I'm trying that's new. So that's something I've seen that with so many people who want to write, but they're afraid of being seen trying. They're afraid that somebody's going to see them doing something or saying something and they'll get criticized for it. What's the worst thing that can happen? Somebody doesn't like your writing? Okay, so go read something else. This is something that, is the biggest danger for most of us in terms of not, getting ourselves unstuck from drifting. So, anytime you try to solve a problem, it is always solved faster with guidance than with willpower. That's not weakness, that's leverage. So, that term leverage is used in all kinds of areas in business and all kinds of things with strategy. Leverage who you know, leverage the people you know, leverage the opportunities that you have. That is not weakness. That is strategy. That is that getting that guidance is going to solve a problem faster. You could have in your mind the idea that in your mind is amazing, and you might tell it to somebody else and they might say, you need to tweak something here. Or you know what, you're going down the wrong rabbit hole. You are doing something that isn't going to relate to people. And you might be able to stop yourself before it goes too long and it might be too hard to backtrack. So if you think about this, it's really leveraging everything and every person that you have. You just have to have the, ability to say, I'm trying something new. Hey, can I talk to you about it? And I'll tell you that most people are fine with it. And if they're not, maybe they don't need to, maybe you don't need to be talking with them. So if you feel stuck, if you feel like you're drifting, if you feel like you're stagnant, if you feel like you're not moving forward, you can take a look at what's going on in your life. Maybe you don't know your next step. Maybe you don't believe it'll work. Maybe you're afraid of the change because you identify in a certain way. Maybe you identify as a person who's always got it together and you never need to ask anybody for anything. You don't need a life overhaul for that. You just need a conversation with somebody. Because oftentimes we don't know the next step, but it's so obvious to somebody else. Here's the next step that you can take. And here's an easy one that you can do. I can tell you that I was really banging my head against a wall trying to figure something out. And a friend told me, oh, why don't you just use this app, Flute, or why don't you use another AI app and help you through it? It solved my problem immediately. I was like, are you kidding? That was amazing. It saved me so much time. And I was thinking that my idea would never work. But in fact, it made it so I could see the next step. I then believed it will work. And my identity wasn't lost in that. I was able to say, wow, I can do this. So you don't necessarily need an overhaul in your life. You don't need to think, hey, my ideas aren't great. I don't know my next step. I'm floundering. You just need a conversation. That's it. You just need a conversation with somebody. That is your lateral mentor who's out there. That is a person who's probably in your life, or at least they know somebody who you can talk to, and that's what's going to help. So, you know, I hear all the time people will say, I'll change once I'm ready. Well, when are you going to be ready? What is that sign that you're ready? When you say you're ready, what's that going to look like? Is there going to be some kind of, like what is it? How will you know? And people can never articulate that. They say, I'll just know. All right, well, that's perfect in fairy tales, but it's not in our real life because most of us don't know when we're ready. We just have to step scared into the next step. So, um, really, you're never ready. You never feel ready. You might feel summoned. You might feel like, oh, I have this passion and I have to follow it in terms of doing a project. But sometimes you just need to push yourself. You just need to say, I'm going to take a step off of this, what feels like a cliff. And then you find out it's just a baby step. It's not a cliff. You just have to do it, even if you feel like you're not ready. If you wait to be ready, you'll be drifting forever. And so these are the kinds of things that if we look at this and we take a look at all the things that we're doing and not doing, why is it? It's good to know why. So, I hear also all the time for people who are in their 20s that they feel they're behind. And our life is not linear. We don't just, our life isn't like this, like we're climbing up and there's no race there. So a lot of people will say, I'm just going to drift a bit because I feel like why bother going on to do this next thing? I'm already behind. I hear this with people who are in their late 20s who are still getting their undergrad degrees. Nobody is going to even notice the difference in 10 years, even 5 years. Nobody cares. Keep going, keep doing it, keep moving, because there isn't a time frame on anything. When you're 80, you're never going to sit and look back and say, oh, I took 2 extra years or 10 extra years to get my degree. No, you got your degree. That's all that matters in the end. So these are the kinds of things that can also keep us drifting, can keep us from reaching our potential, is that we'll say to ourselves, I'm behind. But who are you behind? It means that you're comparing yourself to others. And that's really, you're in your own race. Nobody else is racing with you. You're in your own race. So, it's just your own. So you don't have to compare yourself with somebody else. How fast you do something is how fast you do it. I see so many people in midlife who will say, I should have done, X, Y, Z. And they never really wanted to do it, but they're comparing themselves with others. And they're saying, I should have done that. And they never would have really wanted to do it, but they can't help themselves from comparing themselves to others. So you need to reframe. You need traction. You don't need additional clarity. You just need traction. You need to just keep putting a foot in front of the other. Stop solo overthinking. Have a conversation with somebody else. Don't fear exposure, being seen. Hold the hand of somebody else who's guiding you so you don't feel alone when you're going through things. So I hope that this is helpful for people. I will be back on again tomorrow, but hopefully you're not drifting. Hopefully you are out connecting with others. Have a great day.